No one was really discussing it, and me and him are just funny guys just talking wrestling.
And this is kind of breaking news for you guys, but it'll be public by the time this airs.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Downtime in the Ring. This week, we have a very important guest, somebody very important to the state of New Mexico and New Mexico wrestling. We have fabulous Freddie Fame of DCCW this week. What's going on, brother?
Hey, thank you, boys. Thanks for having me, boys. Donovan, yes. Chris, excited to meet you, brother. Thank you. And yeah, you know, in the world of pro wrestling, fabulous Freddie Fame, and then, you know, terrestrially here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Fred Slow, heard daily on 95.9 FM and AM 610 The Sports Animal. That dual life of entertainment, boys, talk radio and pro wrestling. Let's go.
Oh, dude, that must be so fun.
Your days it's the worst.
I always, because I also work as a commercial editor for KOBR, the sister station down there. So
very familiar.
Yeah, so between doing this and then doing that, like it's kind of hard for me to balance. How do you balance being a talk show, a radio show host, and all that?
Oh God, I don't. DCCW? Yeah, no, don't at all. Like 0% of the time do I balance it. You know, it's crazy because I'm the only cat kind of within the DCCW where my shoot job is also entertainment, you know, and I've been in the world of talk radio for 20 something years, and how fortunate I am to have found some success at different levels and for a bunch of three-letter networks and all over this great country. And then, you know, forever, and maybe you guys can resonate with this, and maybe the fan base of, you know, Downtime in the Ring, but what it is, it's, I was always yearning to create, you know, and we had these, for years, it was me giving my opinion, and for years, it was me reporting on. And, you know, for those in the state of New Mexico, you know, I was the broadcaster for New Mexico Highlands for a lot of years, and how fortunate I've been to be able to relay the story in front of me. And why did I fall in love with that, boys, right? I fell in love with that because I grew up watching pro wrestling. I grew up watching Bobby Heenan tell stories, and Mike Adamle tell stories, and Mike Tenay tell stories, and I can run all the names, right? And I grew up falling in love with that because I couldn't do power bombs in the ring, and I couldn't do flips like Rey Mysterio. But what I could do is I could articulately express the intent behind the actions you were seeing, you know, and I guess I was in year 15, 16, 17 or radio, and I said, you know, boys, I yearn to create, and I want to do that through the world of pro wrestling. COVID aside, which slowed down a lot of things, we got a good group of dudes together, and we started creating. We started telling stories, and never have one second if I said the last professional promoter, fabulous Freddie Fame, is not Fred Slow. I've never not said that Fred Slow is not he, because it's one and the same. And if you look at time linearly, I think you're wrong. I think it's like a bowl of spaghetti, and how all these things intertwine with each other. And here the three of us sit, so fortunate to talk about an industry that we're also very passionate about, in the state that we're also very in love with. Speaking of KOBR, and this is kind of breaking news for you guys, but it'll be public by the time this airs. Duke City Championship Wrestling is going to Saturday nights after Saturday Night Live on KOB. So that's very exciting.
Oh, nice.
So we're going to be bringing our program. The release date not set yet, but if we're in June when this thing debuts, what is going to happen is you're going to be able to turn on, because you guys debut on Saturdays. I'm familiar with your schedule. You're going to be able to catch Downtime in the Ring on Saturday mornings. You're going to be able to catch Duke City Championship Wrestling on Saturday nights following Saturday Night Live. So you're bookending your day with some of the best locally produced wrestling entertainment in the state. Let's go, pro wrestling fan. Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
So I had a question. So I actually attended UNM from 2016 to about 2018. I've been to a couple shows, being just a college kid wanting to go to every concert known to man after getting that financial aid check and stuff like that. But when I went to El Rey, I guess I honestly, and this is on my bad, but I've never really, was DCCW really like prevalent around that 2016, 2018 time period?
No, we didn't exist, right? So there was a history here of pro wrestling, which is, you know, fun because it's, again, not linear. And, you know, for a bunch of years, there was individuals. Mike London is a guy. If you haven't looked him up, learn the rich history of pro wrestling at the Civic Center here in Albuquerque. And this year, it's a goal of ours to have the Mike London Invitational. And what we're going to do is reach out to his family. We're going to have a bunch of individuals come in, and that's how we're going to crown our tag team, you know, whenever the time comes for that. And And he did it for a lot of years at the Civic Center. And similar to the way that I or you, Donovan, or you, Chris, similar to the way we fell in love with it at a young age with our families, a lot of families in Albuquerque fell in love with it because of him. With that said, there was a tremendous organization in town for a lot of years called DWO. And DWO, Destiny Wrestling Organization, they were something special. They ran quarterly. They had a really cool ownership group. Some of those guys work for me currently. Adam Merrick, our ring broadcaster, was in the ownership group there. Matthew Robles, who's known as the MK Bandit, he was in the ownership group there. Kevin Vanderkeef, who performed his decks, he now owns Phase One Pro Wrestling, and their resurgence is right alongside our resurgence, because at the time that Duke City Championship Wrestling, there was not a endorsed by the state pro wrestling organization in the state of New Mexico at that time. So I'm a licensed promoter, right? So as a licensed promoter in the state of New Mexico, there's about 1 million different hoops you have to jump through, including stuff that's not pro wrestling, which is legislation and litigation and sanitation. Why not, right? And as I'm telling you all of this, it's because those were the obstacles set in place by the state. It was made difficult. It was gatekept. There's not another phrasing for it, from pro wrestling to exist here. And this dates back to the 80s, boys. I'm not trying to give you a history lesson. But there was a time when Vince McMahon and the WWF at the time, soon to become WWE, soon to become disgraced Vince McMahon, what it was they were seeking legitimacy in the world of pro wrestling in a kayfabe sense. So they would have states write legislation, state statute, rules, laws, things that could be implemented to identify pro wrestling as real. Well, real is a real interesting term, right? Because the way New Mexico works, and I'm sorry if I'm on a diatribe here, the way New Mexico works is you have to have a state athletic commission, because you have to have a governing body over the world of boxing, because the three of us, and I know the fan base that you guys have because it's a smart one, is very familiar with how corrupt that world can be. So then they incorporate the world of pro wrestling into it, and we're still sitting under statutes that hadn't been revised since 1988, except one time in 2002 when they added Ultimate Fighting to it. So as a member of the rules committee, I go in and I say, hey, I want to bring back pro wrestling. By the way, don't tell me I have to have a pinfall or submission. If the Barbie movie debuts and I want to have a match where we rip the head off of Barbie and that's the winner, that's the stipulation to win the match. Like, I don't need these rules that are foolish, outdated, and number three, a little embarrassing for people to know about it. So there was not pro wrestling here from 2018 to 2023 that was endorsed by the state. Now, there was some stuff going on at barns. There was some stuff going on in backyards, but I can't speak to that because we've only ever done it, the legitimized path. But with that said, whatever you saw, Chris, it had a lot of the same performers, including Hobo Hank, who's a co-owner of Duke City Championship Wrestling, including Turbo Tony, who's a mainstay, including Thunder, who's our current champion and has been since October 2023. So a lot of that talent, a lot of that taste, and if you fell in love with it at the time at local civic centers or armories, it's now with us at the historic El Rey Theater. We place the ring right there in front of the stage. We pack at or near 500 people into the El Rey once a month, which is really incredible. And our last show, last Saturday, so at the airing of this would have been the 25th, we had nearly 500 individuals, our largest gate ever, which was a lot of fun financially, not person wise. And then we brought in what's going to end up being season 2 of Duke City Championship Wrestling, which is a world of fun announcements, including the state fair right around the corner. But with that said, pro wrestling in this incantation, 1 year old as of the 25th of this past year, and how very proud we are for the success that we have already reigned, because you, Chris, had questioned if we've been here for years, because that's how good we're doing it. So we're so very happy.
Thank you.
That's crazy, man. He just schooled us. Holy crap. So I popped when you mentioned Dex because of Phase One Pro, and they're about to have a show this Saturday, which we're gonna go help media wise. With Two Scoops being one of the biggest stars that you guys have over at Duke City. Are you trying to have more people go over to Phase One? Are you trying to work with Phase One a little bit more?
Great question. No, that's a great question. It's interesting because they're separate entities, right? So Duke City Championship Wrestling, our ownership group, Phase One, their ownership group. And as far as, we run monthly, they run quarterly. As far as the talent goes, we really have it on a booking style system. We have guys who work for us very regularly. We have guys who have been on every show.
Mm-hmm.
But if that individual were to come to me and say, hey, Freddie, I want to, book in Colorado at Steel City, or hey, Freddie, I want to go to Texas and I want to work for Outcast, or hey, Freddie, I want to go to Phoenix and work for Phoenix. Yes. Hard yes. how appreciative I am if they give, Duke City Championship Wrestling, by the way, June the 28th at the Historic El Rey Theater, our next show. If they give Friday, June the 28th priority in their world, how fortunate I am to have earned that from them. And then with that said, Kevin and I are in constant conversation, right? So it's Kevin is not going to run a show the day we're running a show. I'm not going to run a show the day that Kevin is running a show. And if he and I can be part of the reason that this tide in town raises all ships, let's be a part of that reason. Also, to be very transparent, we are a TV show that puts on live wrestling. Kevin is a traditional Phase 1 pro wrestling, and I went to the debut show. I won't be able to make this one, which at the time of this airing was last week, June the 1st. But what they're doing, that is how introductory to wrestling. That is like if you are a fan for the first time and our music is too loud or our lights are too bright or our cameras are too intense. Yes, I get it. Go to Phase 1. Go see that their Casey Hall that they work out of is tremendous. Go sit down, have a drink, bring your friends, have the event explained to you as it's going on. Watch really talented guys. Watch Turbo Tony. Watch Tommy Two Scoops. Watch Devin Reno. Watch these guys go out there, wrestle each other really, really well. And then if you are still in love with it, 2 weeks later or a month later, come see us at the Historic El Rey Theater and vice versa. So as far as an official transition of talent, no, not necessarily. But will you see a lot of the same faces, and will maybe Turbo Tony, for an example, you get to cheer as the greatest baby face of all time, and you get to jeer as the greatest heel of all time in this other place. It to me is the best case scenario you can have as a fan right now.
Yeah, so when I was there at the first show mark out, I was there with the OTR camp. They had been saying that you had been there, but I was so busy trying to help out with everything that I hadn't paid attention. Sad that you won't be at this June 1st show.
I have to host Brooks and Dunn over at Isleta.
That's actually
So Kix Brooks calls and he's like, hey, we're coming to town. I'm like, yeah, Kix, and he's done the show, a couple times, and I'm like, yeah, I'll get out there, VIPs or whatever. He's like, I need you in the back. We gotta do Albuquerque the right way. I'm supposed to go to this wrestling thing, I'm going on this whole diatribe or whatever. He's like, Fred, we only reunite once every. I'm like, okay, I'm in. So we'll be over there for that, and that's a shame, but I know I'll get a lot of feedback, because whenever, not just when WWE comes to town or GCW came to town semi-recently, whenever pro wrestling comes to town, the fan base of pro wrestling makes a point to make sure we know through social media exactly everything that's gone on. And is that a positive or a negative? That's often open for interpretation. But what they do is they tell us when there's talent in the vicinity. And if I'm fortunate enough to cross paths with they and give them an opportunity to come over to Duke City Championship Wrestling or vice versa. Like I know, like our ring photographer, Rusty Rutherford, who I don't know how well you guys kind of know all that, but I know he was over at Phase 1. Because he got an opportunity because he took really good photos with us. And, if there's part of your fan base that thinks, and I didn't mean to cut you off, D, but if there's part of your fan base that thinks, pro wrestling is only the performers in the ring, they're the most important part. I'm not going to say they're not. But, in the world of Duke City Championship Wrestling, we got TV guys and light guys and sound guys and photographer guys. And we got bakery guys and we got pizza guys and we got bartenders and we got security and we got, and you just run the list, the owner/janitor. Right here, so there's a bunch of dudes that make all these things go around, and I know you guys helping with Phase 1 is very similar to what we do with Pro V Networks. We get out, we get content, we put it together, we hand it to an audience that maybe didn't have an opportunity to be there. And when I do go to the next Phase 1 show, which I might need to be corrected here, but I believe is in September. I'm not trying to put anything out there for them. When I do go to that next show, I'll be up to speed because of the effort you guys gave and the effort that social media created. So we're living just in a golden age, boys, of pro wrestling here in Albuquerque, and how fortunate the three of us are to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's a crazy like boom period. Like everyone calls it the new era, the Renaissance era, whatever you want to call it. But we had just barely started almost a year ago. Right, Donovan? You started over a year ago, but I started April
21st. We've gotten here. Your first episode was July 5th.
Yes. So in that regard, what kind of spawned kind of like doing all this was there's no real market for a podcast that talks and discusses pro wrestling. New Mexico has the occasional tour every once in a while that WWE puts on. Like they'll have some guy at the Santa Ana Star Center. We live in Roswell, and so therefore Lubbock and El Paso are the two that we would go to, if not Albuquerque. Other than that, but we kind of looked at the landscape and we saw that no one was really discussing it, and me and him are just funny guys, just talking wrestling, just hanging out at his apartment, and we're just like, hey, let's just try this, because he started interviewing people, and so I was like, hey, let's go interview Gino Rivera. And so that from that point on, it kind of just flourished. And then we at the same time, we saw this resurgence of people interested. Like I had people at work asking me, like, and it's weird, like, hey, have you seen that, like, this guy named Cody Rhodes? He's Dusty's son and he won the championship. And it's weird because it's like, how do you know this? You know, so it's crazy.
You know, there's something infectious about that. And I know Donovan knows this, but I might be introducing this to you, Chris, or your audience. But, you know, I've been in media for a long time, and how fortunate I am to go to every Big Four event every year for WWE. You know, how fortunate I am that they bring me out, how fortunate I am to be able to be a part of Royal Rumbles, WrestleMania, SummerSlams, and Survivor Series all year. And, you know, part of that is trying to communicate, and that's what we try to do with DCCW, is that energy you're talking about. Like Cody Rhodes' story of like returning from AEW and being and it took 2 years. You know, a lot of people predicted it would take one, but I was there, you know, when he comes out in the Royal Rumble, and I was there when he won in Philadelphia, and to be able to know that emotion. And I don't do drugs. I don't know if you guys do, but it's a thing where I know what that high feels like of having been a part of it. And if we can encapsulate a piece of that here locally into Albuquerque and have that same energy for Hobo Hank, you know, because, you know, there's a lot of pro wrestlers in the state of Mexico, and then there's Hobo Hank, and to have individuals come out and just celebrate him, because that's the energy that brings you to that moment, is not a thing that we created. It's a thing we stole from WWE, you know. And then, you know, Comic-Con's coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'll host the panel with Jimmy Hart and Scott Steiner and all those guys, and it'll be a lot of fun. And that's what we'll talk about. You know, we won't talk about hey, tell me about the 33 and 33% promo you cut whatever years ago. And, you know, Jimmy, don't tell me why it's important to not just talk loud, but look loud. You know, the same questions they've got forever. We'll talk about, give us, because they're both in that world of independent wrestling now, give us those examples of when you felt an energy that was as poignant as one of the Big Four pay-per-views, you know, because we're fortunate to capture that every so often at the historic El Rey Theater. And that, to me, is what you're talking about, Chris. It's people are talking to you not because they know specifics. People are talking to you because they want to convey emotion. And I think that's entirely what pro wrestling is. It's not, do you have the best pro wrestlers? It's, do you have the right pro wrestlers?
I see. Yes.
So one, can we talk about the NWA deal?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And two, we know you guys do have podcasts. We're still the number one. That's all I wanted to say. So the NWA deal, let's get a little bit into that, because once I saw that, and we do allow cussing on here in case it slips out for you, I was shitting bricks, man, just because, wow. How did that happen?
Yeah, oh my God, we're wild fortunate, right? So, and you guys know I work green because of the AM, FM radio, but I tell you, expletives were needed, you know, whenever that thing kind of came to fruition. You mentioned the podcast. So Saleh Taylor and I, who's my co-host on Duke City Championship Wrestling at the El Rey, we have this program called Going Over airs every single Saturday terrestrially on 95.9 FM and AM 610, the Sports Animal here in Albuquerque. And then obviously there's a podcast that's available, but it's primarily independent wrestling based, but we will talk about big ones. Last weekend was the big one, right? King of the Ring and Double or Nothing. So we go into that kind of stuff, which is fun. But by the time, you guys know this, by the time a thing airs on a Saturday, it's old hat. You know, so we try to just do a lot of forward-thinking conversation. With that said, the NWA deal was neat. So it was the Royal Rumble of this year. So that was the one down in St. Pete. So I go down to St. Pete, and what I traditionally do, and just to smarten your audience up a little bit, so I do press conference stuff. So that's my thing. So when they do the after the big event press conferences, I'm one of the guys who asks a question. So I go down, and I always go down 2 days early. I always leave 2 days late. And my idea is, whenever I do this, is a lot of these promotions that are local, independent, or smaller, give me AEW, NWA, TNA, that kind of thing, they run shows kind of adjacent to the big show that WWE is putting on. And I make an effort to go, right? Like I want to see MLW. Like I want to see, like, number one, the individuals, but number two, I want to see who's available, right? So I go down, and I'm so fortunate to be able to, because I have call letters, KNML. I can press into anything, right? So I'm so fortunate to get into some stuff. And I go down, and I'm looking for a cat named Brian Idol. So Brian Idol is just 25 years in the industry, absolute pro, wrestles all over the world, but he runs the territories for NWA. And I'm aware of this because I'm aware of this. Mm-hmm. So I'm going down there looking for him, where I say, hey, I'm looking at the island that is the Southwest here. I'm looking at that. And you guys were talking about Las Cruces. We took Duke City Championship Wrestling down there for Cinco de Mayo. You know, I'm looking at how close Dallas is, how close Phoenix is, how close Denver is, how close parts of Mexico are. And we're on an island right here. You know, if we're so fortunate to be able to do a place that people are willing to go instead of going past us for an event, let's make sure we're doing good events. So I sit down with Brian Idol in Florida, and I say, hey, Brian, this is who I am. This is what I do. And he says, well, Fred, I'm familiar with you. You just had Jacob Fatu at a show. I go, 100% correct. You know, we had Jacob Fatu tear the house down. He was a World of Town, and he had signed with WWE like a month later, right? So, and also me and Jacob are like out that night. Oh, this is a weird, wild story that has nothing to do with anything. But me and Jacob are out getting just tore up from the floor up. And some cat walks up to us, and he's like, you're Jacob Fatu. And he's like, I'm Jacob Fatu. This is my who's Fred. He's like going through the whole story. And this dude's like, he's like, hey, will you hand me this bottle of champagne after I asked my wife to marry me, or his girlfriend or whatever? And Jacob's like, how? You know, so he's like, and I'm like holding the camera, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, what is our life? Like, it was the wildest thing. Anyway, I'm circling back. So as I'm talking to Idol, he's like, yeah, man, I'm familiar with your work. I watch your TV stuff. Like here, you know, here's my contact. I'm going to go pro wrestle. So I watch him pro wrestle. He does really well. We connect afterwards. And I'm like, Brian, I want to bring you out. I want you to come out. I just want you to see it. Like, I can tell you all about it. But until you stand across from Hobo Hank and you hear 500 screaming fans giving you their rendition of Mr. Bojangles, like, you won't get it. And I'm not saying you're not smart, but I'm saying I'm not articulate enough to explain it. So he comes out and he wrestles for us. And it might be the best match we've ever had in the history of Duke City Championship Wrestling, and how very great they do. So they wrestle. He calls Billy Corgan, and Billy Corgan, who famously the front man of the Smashing Pumpkins, but also owns the NWA. So he calls me and he says, hey, I need to connect on this thing. The real issue we're having, I don't know how inside pro wrestling we're going here. He's like, everyone on the West Coast really wants to be an NWA pro wrestler. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, that tracks. He's like, and I got all these wrestlers on the East Coast based out of Louisville. You guys are kind of familiar with all this. So he's like, I got all these East Coast wrestlers and never get a chance to go West. He's like, what do we need to do here? And I'm like, well, you know, we'd love to be the hub for that, right? So if you want to send us a Lattimore or an EC3 or fill in the blanks, right? If you want to send those guys out West, we'll absolutely spotlight them, no doubt in my mind. And if you want to have a bunch of individuals from the West that are excited about working with you, send them here to Albuquerque. They don't need to fly all the way to Kentucky. They don't need to fly all the way to Atlanta. You know, they can fly right here to Albuquerque. We'll put them in the ring. You send it. Maybe it's Brian. Maybe it's whoever. But whoever does your talent, whatever, send them to us. And then what we're going to have is a bunch of new faces from the West Coast showing up and showing out for NWA. And then we're going to have a bunch of established NWA brands here in the Duke City wrestling, you know, for us, for their titles, doing what? Propelling us to the CW app, giving us opportunities that we won't necessarily have without that partnership. Also, I don't know how it relates to anything. Billy Corgan, so interesting to talk to a dude so passionately and impassioned about pro wrestling, whenever you can easily identify him as one of the greatest to ever do alternative rock. You know, so to find those level of expertise.
Oh my God.
That's bad.
Call on. Oh my God. One of the coolest match types.
In a world of wrestling, we bring to you the WSN app, only on Roku.
How fortunate I am that Billy, or how unique of an experience it was that Billy, we got to have this, you know, full-on connection in the world of pro wrestling and the business opportunity for each other. And I'm just like, disarm you with a smile. And I'm like, it was as wild as I'd ever seen. This is, and I think I have a similar thing where I'm like, hey, I'm no longer a radio guy. I'm a wrestling guy, and like, what does that even mean? Like I'm learning.
Crazy.
So
yeah, no, I'd probably be like, today is the greatest.
Damn, I have it down. And the whole time Billy Corgan's like, he's like, hey, I got you guys have really good production. You got really good talent. He's like, Brian put you over. He's like, let's go on this thing. So we do have September. So September is when
I might have to show up. I might have to show up because
let me pitch it first. Let me pitch it first.
Go ahead.
So we would love to come and work for you, test our broadcasting skills, obviously help New Mexico grow, do some downtime in Duke City pre-show before your guys' biggest show. We would love to do that.
Love everything. Well, there's always a bunch of different avenues, right? And what's the best way to say this? You create content, right? And all you can do is create content that you're proud of. Like I can't create a thing and say, I think everyone's going to really like this. No, what I can do is create a thing where I go, I really like this. And then if there's a certain subset of the audience that gets it, heck yeah. And that's the idea with like this pitch, right? To where, what I can't do is I can't put Donovan and Chris on the broadcast because me and Saleh are there and that's who the audience knows and that's who they trust. Hey, bud, is it far-fetched that we did a live from the historic El Rey Theater, the pre-panel, whatever, and we set it up in the back and put a brick wall behind you? And do I know if it'll go well? Heck no, I don't. Do I know people will tell me if it does? Heck yes, I do. So that's the thing where you regularly are creating like different opportunities for different outlets. Also, I'll use like me and Saleh as an example. I'm the tallest, whitest, low-key, pretty handsome white guy you've ever met. Saleh is the shortest, stumpiest American Samoan you've ever met. Like the salt and pepper of us is as good of a pairing as any two human beings on earth. And that's not by accident, boys. Like that's very TV-minded, like desire, right? So it's to say, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to replace Saleh and Fred with brown Donovan and white Chris, and we're going to do the exact same thing over and over again. And you're like, no, like you can't do that.
No.
See, you got to supplement in, right? Because that's the world we're currently in, where it's like, who can you create and put on the screen that your audience can relate to? And if for us, that's Hobo Hank, or if for us that's Thunder, who our first champion is not to give all Thunder's business. Thunder's a Hispanic dude. Like there's a lot of like young fans out there who are like came up in the streets and are bad brown dudes who really relate to him. You know what I mean? Like whenever Angelica Risk wrestles for us, who, by the way, is the Nightmare Women's Champion and Nightmare Factory Women's Champion. She was back in town with us, Albuquerque native. Whenever she every girl in the audience falls in love with her because she's from there and she is them. And whenever we bring in Veronica Vega from Texas, it's easy to hate her because look at her face. And you end up telling multiple levels of stories all at the same time. So yeah, boys. Whenever the time comes, and we'll connect off air about it, but we can absolutely talk about a different way or more ways to incorporate the audience that you have captured with the product that we create. What's the point of having either of them if we're not working together?
And that's the craziest part. So now that we're building ourselves and we're going into these avenues with these other companies and independent wrestlers, there are a lot of people here in Roswell that would love to have a wrestling show. Is that something that you guys want to do, is go to other cities in New Mexico?
Great question. We've done a couple. So we did a really fun and a really important proof of concept in Clovis. So we went down to the Dirty Curry, the Curry County Event Center, put on a banger of a program there. Yeah, we laughed a lot, told weird stories. It was a border wars kind of thing. I went down to Las Cruces, did Cinco de Slamo, which is a Cinco de Mayo event. Just absolutely hilarious and so much fun to go down there and let our characters be, a little bit outside the TV box that we keep them in. We just booked a deal with the International Folk Art Museum. So we're going to go to Santa Fe, do a cool show there. It's going to be entirely luchador based. So that's going to be kind of wild because that's outside of our regular storytelling. We've had conversations with Taos. We've had conversations with Farmington. We will have a conversation with Roswell coming up soon. It's going to be based around NIMI though, because they have really good facilities down there. Yeah. So the idea is we're going to try to take advantage of what they're doing because they're doing so very well. And the thing that's so powerful, in my opinion, I don't know what your audience knows, so I'm going to explain it like they're five, is New Mexico cares. New Mexico every county has like a lodger's tax incentive, right? So the idea is like, hey, if you come to town, we will financially help you be a part of our community so that individuals will travel from afar to be a part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a state here in the state of New Mexico that is empowered to help. And what we have to do is we have to give them, number one, a really good product, but number two, ease of access to help. Because I personally don't feel that anyone wants to do anything if it's hard. So we can put effort into creating these shows afar. And I'll use like you guys as an example. So like, hey, Donovan, hey, Chris, we're coming to Roswell. We need a street team. We need guys out there. We need posters up. We need sponsors in. It's that kind of thing. Here's the crash course. I'll send you T-shirts. We do the whole thing. You guys are the guys for that. We had those guys in Clovis as well. We had those guys in Las Cruces because it doesn't work from afar. And then if we end up in a perfect situation, and this is pie in the sky stuff, boys. But if I'm, 4 times a month or 52 times a year running a weekend show in a different corner of this state, how fortunate Duke City Championship Wrestling would be to have a show in Albuquerque one night, a show in Roswell one night, a show in Farmington the week after that, and then we wrap it up with one in Silver City. Because that is a banger of a month of pro wrestling. And if you're not tired at the end of it, it's because we didn't do it entertaining enough. We didn't entice you to come and be a part of it. So yeah, Roswell definitely on the map. Also the weird alien stuff we could do. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Yes.
It's a gimmick town. It's a gimmick city.
Yeah. It could work. It could work so well. That's insane. That makes me more excited for New Mexico wrestling. Mm-hmm. Just because like me and Chris growing up, like we didn't, even when we got older into our early 20s, that's when we started learning about DWO. That's actually one of the first schools that I reached out to back when I was 18, trying to find a school. And that was I think the last year that they were running before they got closed.
They did. They had a go-home show in 18, and I believe it was known internally that was it. I'm not sure how that announcement went to the audience. I wasn't part of it at that time. I was still just living the world of sports talk. I've been in Albuquerque for 7 years as of June the 1st, and I've been so fortunate to be a part of CBS Sports here for some time. But yeah, like I said, I don't think the passion was lost to any of those individuals. Also, when it comes to schools are, man, that's a slippery slope. It will be surprising to me if there is ever a Duke City Championship Wrestling endorsed wrestling school. The path to wanting to become a pro wrestler is the one you just described, right? To where it's, hey, I'm a big fan of the product. I'm a big fan of my local product. For this example, Duke City Championship Wrestling. What I want to do is learn to do it. I'm going to go to Duke City Championship Wrestling school. Oh no, I can't do it. It's hard. Now I don't like Duke City Championship Wrestling. Damn it. Did I just lose a fan? Did I lose a fan from over here in step 1 because they couldn't do flips? And they didn't consider a career path where they're hosting, pre-show panels instead of getting in the ring and taking bumps. That does happen in this world. So I don't think I'll ever necessarily go down the path of pro wrestling school. But, oh, my God, will I be able to give you the stamp of approval on some schools that do it? And right now I don't know enough. I don't know enough about the ones in New Mexico to tell you if school from this city or school from that city or school from West Texas. I don't know. But I can tell you I know where a lot of the individuals that we use have come from. And we got guys from $1 million buildings with air conditioning and workout rooms that are incredible. And we got dudes that learn in backyards that are as safe and as comfortable as any dudes I've ever met. And for all of them to come from whatever walk of life that they came from and whatever training they came from to work with each other and know that universal language and tell stories the way we encourage them to tell. I can tell you what a professional looks like, and I can't tell you how they get there every time.
Back in 2019, I had one of the worst days of my life. Actually, in a week span, I decided I didn't want to be here anymore. But after I came out on the other end, I realized that there were so many people, especially in this business, that were struggling with some of the same things I was. And a lot of times there is this mindset that we can't really share what we go through, and it's up to us to fight these battles alone. It's almost as if it's TMI to tell people what you're going through and what you're dealing with. And that's when I started hashtag TMI, hashtag tag me in. Because every single day we are in a handicap match with depression, anxiety, stress, life, bills, whatever may have you. But nobody said it had to be a one versus all. If you have people out there that genuinely care, that genuinely want to see you win, that genuinely want to see you succeed, that genuinely want to see you live, tag them in. They're here to help. And that's what TMI is all about.
the thing to me is I've been in entertainment for 21 years, which is wild, right? Like I've been a part of this thing, and I'll use my radio show as an example. The morning show at a sports talk radio station, which right now with the one I'm on is called The Opening Drive, and how very important it is that they recap box scores, how very important it is they preview stories of the day, how very important it is that they have a loyal audience that finds them every day driving to work. In my show, The Afternoon Drive Guys, I'm the zany, kooky, off the wall. We're gonna distract you while you pick your kids up from after school programs. These are two wildly different programs, but they work for wildly different audiences. And I think that's the thing, in my opinion, that Pro Wrestling Insider has really struggled with. Because I believe if you have a passion for approach to pro wrestling, you believe there's not another way to approach pro wrestling. And I'm going to tell everyone, you guys included, your audience, professionals in the world, you're absolutely wrong. To think that there's only one flavor of pro wrestling is the idiocracy of the approach to pro wrestling. To think that I think we had just short of 500 people on my show last week, right?
Yeah.
They were not 500 wrestling fans. They were 500 good time fans. They were 500 fans who like to have drinks with their friends and like to eat pizza. And if you tell me otherwise, if you tell me for a fact that I have to do A, B, and C to get to this point, I'm going to tell you how D, E, F, and G got me here. So that's the thing that I want to always drive home in this world is if you think that you know the best approach to this, I know you don't, because I don't see you doing it. And it's so wild to me for any individual to think they have it. I don't think I have it. I think like you guys coming to me with the pre-show panel stuff, I never would have thought of that. I'm not add more content. You know how much I already create? This is crazy.
Yeah.
So to be able to take that in and be like, let's process this, let's work through it. So yeah, to my knowledge, if a disparaging remark has ever been said by an individual, there's probably a cause to that is more associated with their core belief system than with the execution on our end. And also, vice versa. The handful of people that I don't necessarily work with professionally, there's a reason why. And here's a funny one. Watch these press conferences when I go to WWE. You'll notice where I sit and where I don't sit. And it's not by accident. Like I very much enjoy Noelle Foley. I think Noelle Foley is the nicest gal. Let's hang out. Let's sit next to each other. Let's talk. There's some people she messes around with regularly who I won't name that I don't want to be part of your weird social media. I don't want to. I'm not the guy in the background going when you're doing a dance at a thing. It's just different branding. And I know those people have an audience. So yeah, I would say if there is a perception or an understanding that has been given to anyone, you guys or your audience that says, hey, Duke City Championship Wrestling is not a fan of, I promise you that is wrong. Because every flavor of ice cream goes in this Baskin Robbins, boys. Every single one.
Ooh, I like learning this. I like learning this shit, man. Because you always learn more and more about why we all just can't work together. We're all trying to get this state going. That's the whole point. That's why we want to work with you guys. I don't care what anybody thinks.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, right? Because we're in New Mexico. I think let's use tribes as an example, right? Like every tribe needs warriors, every tribe needs a chief. And over here we have 4: myself, Joe Singer, Aaron Burnett, Fernando Gonzalez. The 4 of us, the job that we do really well. I'm really proud of it. Hobo Hank and Thunder and Mr. Happy and Tommy Two Scoops, they do that part really well. All the guys over at Programming Networks that produce our TV show, all the Liz Howdy of Howdy Cakes who makes our cakes, we all just work here, and if any single individual thinks that their role is more vital than the next person's role, I cannot commentate on pro wrestling if the cameraman is not the best cameraman. That's just how it works, boys. So yeah, I would say if ever a disparaging remark is heard outside of the product, like if you're like, hey, I hate that Mr. Happy lost, what, me too. That's the thing, because we're so fortunate to be able to spark emotion. Because that's all we're doing is we're a bunch of storytellers. If you hate that Mr. Happy lost, it's because we did a really good job of making him lose.
Oh man. Yeah, no. So I agree with all of that. My thing, and I know Chris feels the same way, is that we want to help this content bring more eyes to New Mexico wrestling. And we've had a lot of people on the show like Myron Reed, Eric Cadamia, Brooke Havoc, who are all
that's a murderer's row right there. Way to go.
Thank you. And it's like they all want to mark that off their map. Like that's the thing. They all want to have New Mexico off their map before, somebody else who they trained with gets it marked off. And the only thing I can think of. And I even recommended you guys to last week's episode, since we're in the future. Black Dahlia, her and her partner, they're trying to go and travel the country, and Duke City Championship Wrestling is the place to be right now, as if you want to have a ton of eyes on you, if you want to get that TV spot, that's just how this works now. We all got to help each other.
Well, and you're making a really good example, and I don't know Black Dahlia's work specifically. Is she from New Orleans? Is that correct?
No, she is from Virginia.
Oh, okay, so I apologize. So, but that's like part of the story that you're talking about, right? Which is how do we all like get into a position to help each other? And if Black Dahlia is like, hey, I'm wrestling in Texas on a Wednesday, and then I have to be in Phoenix on a Saturday. Am I running a show on a Friday? I am. And it's like, how can we figure out a way to make that happen? But I do agree with you. That state thing I didn't know was so important to pro wrestlers, but it's very important. They want to wrestle in all 50 of them. And if we can be the landing spot for more than a couple of them, I'd really like to be a part of that. But this is a simple one, and I think I said it to you, Donovan, when you first reached out. I said, I don't check email, just text me. Like, because I don't live in that. Social media is like it's a big one for pro wrestlers, the performers, and they want to DM all the time, and they want updates, and they want likes and comments and shares. And you guys can Google the crap out of me. I don't have any of that stuff. The success that I think is associated with that world is not, the rub is not worth the reward, because I think the distraction associated with that world is too high. Now, here's the thing. You're going to find another pro wrestling promoter or a pro wrestler or anyone in the industry is going to tell you the exact opposite. They're going to say, you can't do it without a social media presence. You can't do it without this. They're not wrong either, because we've all found success as we define that word success with our own individual paths. So, Donovan, if you're talking to, and forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it, Black Dahlia, is that what you said? Dahlia? Okay. So, and I haven't met her. Give her my number. It's that easy. It's one of those things where it's, if you're kind, and if we relate in the same core values, also scheduling, let's go. And then how easy we make it to get officially licensed by the state, get your blood work in, get your insurance done. Boys, the paperwork in this thing, Aaron Burnett is a savior to Duke City Championship Wrestling. The amount of bureaucracy behind a headbutt is too high. It is too high.
Oh, I'm starting to learn all of that, and I wish that's like the scariest thing about trying to wrestle is not getting slammed, is not taking your first bump. It is having to do all that paperwork and spending all that money.
There's an upfront cost, right? That's a real thing, and with our regular contributors, Little Inside Pro Wrestling, we cover that. So with Duke City Championship Wrestling, and that's part of that thing, because I don't make you sign a piece of paper that says, hey, I won't disparage you publicly. I don't make you sign a piece of paper that won't say anything. What I do is I'll cover your insurance. I'll cover your state license. I'll reimburse you for blood. But what I hope is you show me that same goodwill in return. And is that sometimes a gamble on some guys? Heck yes, it is. But is there a lot of loyalty? And, a word I would use with a couple of guys, I'll use like Turbo Tony as an example. I would call Turbo Tony my friend. I don't know if Turbo Tony calls me his friend, but I know for a fact that the amount of success we've had professionally is a strong indicator to the type of person he is personally, and I am a fan of that. So the bureaucracy that is the state of New Mexico is a little too heavy for your boy right now. But if the time that there's ever a change in it, how fortunate I will be to be in a position to be part of that.
And even with all of that, you guys are still thriving each and every month. It doesn't seem like it. Honestly, it seems like it's just easy for you guys. I mean, I know ticket sales are very hard, but also for you guys, it doesn't seem like your audience is month to month and you guys are worried. It seems like they are continuously coming back.
Well, it's wild that you point that one out, right? And Chris, I know I already feel like what your follow-up question is going to be, but tickets are the easy part. People, we've never not sold every seat. They always sell. And individuals come out because they want to be part of the emotion. They want to be part of the environment. The stuff that has been, what's the best phrasing here? What I've had to learn the most is the industry stuff, the style of performers, the personalities of performers, because how fortunate I am to be able to create, and that's a word I use regularly, boys, so I'm sorry if I wear it out, but how fortunate I am to be in an industry that kind of only hits on the things that I'm really good at, like sales, marketing, production, inclusion. Like these are all things that super matter to me. We have a group, All For Us, that comes out to every show, and what they are is they're a non-for-profit that works with adults with developmental disabilities or traumatic brain injuries, and they get them out of their group homes and take them into community exposures, right? So they come out. Well, you know who wants to tell that story? KRQA. You know who wants to tell that story? KOB. And, philanthropy being your best advertising, that's where our next thought process always is. It's who can we help? And then while we're helping them, how can we tell people about it? We host a teen night down at Explora, which is like our science center here in town. And, the news or the print, or there used to be glossy magazines, which don't exist anymore, but radio, they want to tell those stories. They want to be a part of that. And the weirder the story gets, the easier it is to tell. So whenever we beat up Santa Claus in front of a room of teenagers at Explora, KOB wants to put it on TV. So that's where our real issue has come is we're always trying to find the next angle to excite new fan as opposed to regurgitating some of the previous success we have. We put a show on sale. We're in a good place for it to do very well quickly selling out. And then from that moment on, because we have just oh my God, boys, passionate fan base that will give us their first $40 in their pocket or their last $40 in their pocket for a ticket. The amount of responsibility, and the only time you're going to ever hear me use the word stress is right now. The amount of stress I feel to make sure that they're getting every dollar's worth, that's where I'm at. That's where it gets hard, where it's, yes, I am going to throw Hobo Hank off of a ladder. I don't want to, but you want me to. Let's go. It is. Yeah, it's wild, boys. Tickets, not a problem. Sponsors, not a problem. Making sure we're regularly elevating the quality of the product. I will stay up late, losing sleep over.
Oh shit. Now that's where I can feel with you on this, because that's me every episode of the pod coming out where I'm like, was that conversation even worth it? Are people going to enjoy it? Or are we even doing good at this point? And I got mentioned
a little radio 101 for you. I heard this years ago from a program director. Hey, Fred, people aren't tuning into your show for your interviews. They're tuning in for your personality. And that's the thing I would encourage both you boys to know. Because, and I don't know Black Delilah, and I'm excited to meet her, but she interviews elsewhere, and I promise you, your fan base doesn't follow her to every interview she goes to. Your fan base is not going to follow me to every interview I go to. They're going to keep coming back here to you boys, because you boys got big personalities, and you're knowledgeable in your industry, and just make sure that's what's going over. It's I promise you, it's that connection you build the same way you built it to things that you're fans of. And that stuck with me forever from a program director I had years ago that helped me understand it's not who I'm talking to, it's how I'm talking about it.
That's Chris. He just said we're cool. He said
Thanks.
We're cool.
But. Thanks.
Oh man, this is awesome, dude. This is definitely I was a little worried about this. I say that about everybody that we interview, but I was worried about this one just because, we had a talk earlier today with another owner of a promotion out on the East Coast, and that one was nerving, scary. We didn't know what was going to happen. Ended up being one of the greatest talks of my life. So going into this, what
is this someone I know?
You can cut it.
We'll talk after. We'll talk after.
Oh, after.
We'll talk after.
Text me right now and I'll react on air.
Ooh, okay, cool.
No name, but you're gonna get the full reaction.
Ooh, let me see.
That's the way you do it, Chris. Give them because the audience at home on the podcast right now, they're like, oh, who could have? What could it? Well, I know you need to know. So my level of reaction will strongly indicate.
I've slowly tempered down with each guest because we've had, like you said, my
good get, boys.
Yeah. And we've had like Donovan said, my Reed, Brooke Havoc. What was the other one? Zilla Vatu. We've had Martin Casaus, Evan Mack, Caleb Conley, and it's we're finding that fine line of okay, and we're getting that immediate feedback after every podcast, hey, I loved this interview, I will definitely come on. So it's that thing that keeps myself going, at least personally, and I know for a fact it's keeping Donovan going. So it's that constant okay, let's not get too big in our heads. Let's keep it at a tempo because we're keeping it at a tempo, but oftentimes we'll like, hey, we get someone pretty big. so it's like,
well, I know we're at the end. I know we're at the end of it, boys. So what else do you need from me? What's the close? Like, hit me with the closer.
Your socials, sir. Where can everybody find you?
Everything.
Even though you said you didn't have any.
Yeah, well, it's all industry stuff, right? So everything is DCCW. We Google really well, but DukeCityChampionshipWrestling.com. If you want to come to a show, DCCWtickets.com. If you want to buy a shirt, shop DCCW.com. If you want to watch what we've done, watch DCCW.com. So they're all there and available for you. They're easily accessible. Also, if you DM us, I won't answer. We have a guy who runs it, but somebody will answer. And if you're trying to get a hold of me, he will make sure that happens. And also, if you go through and just like bomb everything we've ever put out, I hate that. Please don't do it. But it's a fun way to kind of get familiar with our product. And then lastly, thank you for the opportunity. Being able to come on and talk about a thing that we're also very passionate about, and then be able to communicate that to an audience that equally shares that passion is a big deal to me. And I am forever indebted to you boys. And I know we will connect off air about some projects moving forward.
Nice. Sounds good. Ladies and gentlemen, that was our talk, and you can catch us in the next video.